including in Maine this weekend for a lot of schools. Graduating high school students are preparing to become college freshmen in the fall. A lot of pressure there, a lot of excitement. While some have a bit of scholarship money for wherever they're going, probably weren't awarded as much as Joseph Para Miguel. Get this. He earned $5 million in scholarships while attending the Phoenix Coding Academy. That makes up about half of everything his senior class earned in scholarships. He says he did it not just for himself, but his immigrant family as well. Obviously very emotional about receiving all that money and what it means for his future. Joseph was accepted into 49 colleges, a lot to choose from there. Ultimately decided to land on Arizona State University because it is close to home and, of course, has the major he wants, which I have to think is coding if he went to coding high school as well.
ASU is a good choice, but what do you do when you have too many scholarships?
Right. I mean, what happens, a lot of questions that come up with there, but good problems to have as a new college freshman. Thanks for joining us at 12:30. Enjoy your afternoon. We're back at 4.
Thank you, Julie.
Good job, Julie.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I think anytime we can do that. It's very good. And I assume this is Chris's and not yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine says weather on it.
Oh, okay.
So must be Chris's.
Since it's here, I'm going to bang out a video.
Boom.
I am tempted to buy one of these.
Chris Chris buy one for you. He bought it on the Technicard. I saw him with it when we first, in the fall, got all these, you got to make mobile reels, and he just put it on his card and bought one for weather.
I might ask.
Yeah.
Because it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
It's so long I would try to prop things up.
Right.
Oh, Sarah's coming in. Okay, never mind. Hey Sarah. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Unbelievable. How dare you,
could have
Brian?
stayed and worked with us, but no, you decided to run away.
I should have sat over here in the red chair, the timeout chair over in the corner.
being here. On behalf of the Manufacturers Association of Maine, welcome to the MAME and Maine Forest Products Council Gubernatorial Forum. Forum. Not debate. Forum. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for participating today and our partners at the Maine Forest Products Council. Manufacturing and forest products remain foundational to Maine's economy, supporting communities, driving investment, and providing high-quality jobs across the state. We felt it was important to host this forum as part of the annual summit to create a space where employers can hear directly from those seeking to lead Maine, particularly on the issues that impact our ability to grow, invest, and compete. Our goal today is simple: to provide clarity for employers on how each candidate views Maine's business climate and economic future.
Oh, that's me. All right. First, I'd like to thank the Manufacturing Association of Maine for giving us the opportunity to pair up and team for this debate. We're really grateful for the opportunity to be here and for all of the candidates who have traveled all the way as well. Well, you'll hear about some of the challenges facing our members today. I'd first like to set the stage for this conversation with an important observation. From renewable packaging, sustainable carbon-storing building materials, and bio-based fuels and chemicals, to PFAS and carbon-fixing biochar, opportunities for Maine's abundant forests to support rural economies while meeting the needs of our state and our region are endless, given the right climate for investments. As you'll see in our report, that's on our website, our industry is in a period of transition towards a more diverse and resilient portfolio of products. While we have contracted in recent years, we remain an $8.3 billion powerhouse that supports 29,000 jobs across all 16 counties. We welcome the opportunity to engage each of you here today, and on behalf of our members, thank you for running for office, and please keep in touch with both organizations, regardless of the outcome in November. We're here to be a resource to all of you, and most of all, best of luck.
No. So again, my name's John Lewis. I'm the Executive Director for the Manufacturers Association, and my co-moderator for this forum is Krista West with the Maine Forest Products Council. Before we begin, I'll briefly just review the format. The forum will be organized around key topics identified by MAME and MFPC members. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for introductions, 1 minute for topic responses, brief responses to the lightning round, and 1 minute for closing remarks. And we're also going to work in a couple audience questions in there as well. Speaking order, we are going to try to do our best to rotate, but there's a lot of you. So I'm not sure everybody's going to get a chance to go first. Time limits, hopefully we can enforce. We've got a clock over there, but please bear with us. We're going to try to do our best. We're going to try to cover a range of topics. We appreciate everyone's cooperation and keeping the discussion moving along. We'll begin first with candidate introductions. Please introduce yourself, share what you view as the biggest challenge or opportunity for manufacturing in Maine, and what you would prioritize in your first 100 days as governor to support the industry. So how about we start on this end? And we're going to be sharing mics, so hopefully that's okay. We got 3 up there.
It's all about sharing.
So I'll just start and say, what an ambitious undertaking here with as many people here as are at the table. Thank you, John and Krista. My story is simple, a series of lightning strikes. I grew up in a little town of 500 called Wayne. My mother raised 4 kids largely on her own, and World War II vets were the distinguishing feature in my life. I worked for a couple of them. Father never finished college, ended up getting these lightning strikes. Dartmouth College, worked hard all the way through. Oxford University, a degree in economics, and then Columbia Law School, Reagan White House. Did a lot of things that I never expected to do. Ended up 10 years Navy intelligence. And when Colin Powell called and asked if I would be Assistant Secretary of State managing most of the operations of state, and also work to try to restore efficiencies, that is what I did. So I have also run a company for 25 years. That company, in my view, is a platinum level company. What it does is a small business. 99% of Maine business is small. And my concerns about Maine really can be collapsed very quickly. I think we live in a state of hostility toward business. Government in this state is overregulated. They overregulate us, they overtax us, they put us in a position where we're fighting rules and mandates and permits, and this is not the state that I grew up in. I grew up in a state that was pro-business, small government, very accountable, no crime. We were a state that really was proud to give the individual their right to prosper. So that's what I want to see back in this state. I believe we can do it. This is a many hands makes light the load effort. And I do also honor everybody on this stage because I think there's a good heart in everybody up here. My means and experience, I think, fit like a glove to where we need to go. So, thank you.
So we do an intro or first 100 days?
Both.
Both.
Quick intro.
Quick intro. Hi, I'm Jonathan Bush. I am a husband and father of 7. I'm a veteran. I'm an entrepreneur. And for 30 years, I was a CEO. I started a company in my basement that grew to $6 billion, shook up an industry, and created 1,000 Maine jobs. I believe that Maine's government has become too big and too bloated in terms of the rules that it inflicts. We have become a no-fly zone. We're at the top of every list you don't want to be on as a state that wants to grow its economy, and the bottom of every list you need to top, whether it's the top 3, number 3 state in electrical costs, number 3 state now just moved from 5 to 3, mazel tov, in taxes in the country. It's no wonder that we are down at 46 for our business climate and 49 for economic growth at 0. Wow. So what we need to do is shrink the taxes, shred the no-fly zone type of laws, these performative environmental, performative social justice noise, and shrink Augusta. And then we can begin to get out our watering can and bring an economy back to the state. I'm proposing $1 billion tax cut, which I think can easily be returned. I distinguish myself from the other people up here that I've done these things. I've actually built a company, built thousands of jobs in Maine, and doing something that is important to Maine, which is helping small businesses survive. My company focused on small medical providers and letting them survive. So I think I'm a fit for the next governor. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. My name's Angus King. I am sitting here right now because I could not stand by. Too often, I think the sound and fury of our politics fans the flames of our problems instead of putting them out, and life has just gotten harder here in Maine. Housing costs have doubled, energy prices have grown at twice the national average, our schools have gone from the best to the bottom. We need something different. We need a new and better way. The good news is my campaign offers that new and better way, one that is focused not on division, but on the hopes and challenges that all Mainers face just trying to get through their day. And I know that it works. I also know with every fiber of my being that we can still accomplish great things in our state. And more than ever, we have to. To get there, we're going to need something different. We're going to need a leader who has harnessed the power of a clear vision and shared effort, someone who has put public and private sectors together, urban and rural views together, climate and energy know-how together, hell, even Republican and Democratic ideas together to make a difference in people's lives. I know it's possible because I've done it. I've built housing for thousands of people. I've built energy projects around the world. And I have done it with people who had every reason to disagree to build things nobody thought was possible. We can take that and make Maine a place where costs are lower, schools aim higher, wages are up, and discord is down. I know we can do it. I am full of optimism about what we can do here in Maine, but we really have to do something different, and it's going to come from somebody who has worked on every side of these issues and who's gotten things done. Thank you to the nice lady who told me I have 10 seconds. And I'll pass it on to my colleague Ben on the right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Has my time started yet?
Yes.
It has, okay, all right. So, moving quickly, I'm not a politician, okay? I'm from outside of that world. I'm running for the governor's office to bring common sense values and principles back to the governor's office. About me, I grew up here in Maine. My wife's from Maine. Our kids grew up here. They all went to the same high school I did. One's still in high school. Myself, I never made it out of college. I tried to. I was working a few years for that. I couldn't afford it. Personally, I spent time on unemployment, spent time on food stamps back in the day when they were actually stamps. In the fitness industry, it was my career. I started cleaning machines in the industry in exchange for a membership, and over 30 years, eventually became the president of a company called Planet Fitness. It's a large national franchise. I left there, started another company called Crunch Fitness Franchising as the chief executive officer and founding partner. In over 15 years, built that to the #1 fitness franchise in the country. I had 500 locations in 46 states, 6 countries. 3 million members, over $1 billion in revenue, and I created 15,000 jobs across the country building that company. So for me, I strongly believe we do need a CEO's focus in the governor's office to get things going in the right direction. What I think helps manufacturing is really what helps all businesses. I've met with over 50 different industries in the state, driven over 60,000 miles, meet with people, and nobody's really happy with the environment. There's 0 jobs forecasted, 0 economic growth in the job sector through 2029. That's the Mills economic forecast. You can't have that. To do that, you got to do a lot of things. You got to have a pro-business focus. You've got to fix the welfare system in the way that it allows people to get their benefits as they get off of the system. Not to take them away, but allow them the opportunity to get in the workforce. We're 4% lower on labor force participation. You've got to get rid of the electricity costs, housing, insurance, permitting, cut corporate personal taxes, use incentives to bring business back in, reduce regulations, get
10
depreciation,
seconds.
conformity, so many things to fix the business environment, and that's my intention. Thank you.
Oh, pass it back that way. Hello, my name is David Jones. I live in Falmouth, Maine. I've been a resident in Falmouth now for 25 years. I started my company when I was 17 years old. I didn't go to college. I went to the Italian university. It's called What's the Matter You? And I worked my way. I worked my way through everything. It was really a tough road to hoe. But I took my company from me and a few guys to 1,100 people on my payroll, and another 4,000 or 5,000 people we kept as subcontractors. I built high-rises, malls, shopping centers. I built the largest mall in Palm Beach, the Gardens Mall. I built the Disney Caribbean Beach Resort in Orlando. So big projects like taking on government in Augusta, I can handle it. So this is not a learning experience for me. I've been married for 41 years to my wife, Nancy. I have 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. I have 8 grandchildren, 4 boys, 4 girls. So the Jones family is definitely fair and balanced. Now, you know, we talk about what we want to do here. You know, like everybody on the stage will probably agree, I think, on most everything. We're in trouble. But we need a CEO. We need a guy who really understands it and is going to toe the line for the people of the state of Maine. We have to have a business-friendly atmosphere. We don't. I've been self-employed my entire life. I've always signed the front of the check. I've been through 3 different recessions. I know what it's like to go through tough times. I know what we have here in the state of Maine are a lot of small businesses. And the only way you're going to get things done is have somebody as a governor who knows and has felt your pain. I have felt your pain. So I would ask you this. You know, there's a lot of good people. Yeah, we got choices. But who's the guy that's going to get it to the finish line? Who's the guy that can work with Republicans and Democrats and get things done? Who's the guy who's been a team builder his entire
10
life?
seconds.
I've had an open door policy my entire life. As governor, I promise you that will not stop. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Bennett. I am running for governor as an independent. I live in the town of Oxford. Now, many of you may know me from my state Senate service, including my time as president of the Senate when we had a tied Senate. But I actually started my career in manufacturing. I've run businesses. I've met payroll. I've made tough decisions. I've dealt with the same costs and talent issues that many of you are facing today. I understand what you're up against because I've lived it. Business leaders need consistency, not chaos. And they need an ally in the Blaine House who knows how to get things done in government as well. I'm running as an independent because I want to govern as an independent. That means I'll be accountable to you, not to a political party, and not to the special interest groups. It means I'm listening to the people on the front lines and developing solutions with the people closest to the problems that we're trying to solve. As governor, I'm going to be focused on making life affordable, growing our economy, and restoring trust in government. We will lower energy costs, and I was honored to share our plan for doing so just yesterday at Robbins Lumber in Searsport with Jim Robbins, and we will build housing so your workers can actually live near your facilities. That's why I launched my campaign at a manufacturing plant, KBS Builders, in South Paris. We'll grow our economy by aligning workforce training with the jobs needed and by creating a business climate where you can compete. And it's paramount that Maine's next governor earns back the public's trust by being honest,
10
effective,
seconds.
and accountable. So I just want to say, you know what this industry needs, and my job as governor will be to create the conditions for you to be successful. Thank you.
My name is Owen McCarthy, and I grew up in the shadow of Mount Katahdin in a trailer on my grandfather's land, the son of a third-generation logger and a second-generation lunch lady. Growing up in a town of Patten, Maine, I had a great advantage because I learned a lot about hard work, personal responsibility, and I had a great public school education. I then went on to the University of Maine and studied engineering on the pulp and paper scholarship, and then worked in our heritage pulp and paper industry as a supplier to the industry for many years and been in many of the paper mills in this state. I then went on and became an entrepreneur, first starting a 3D printing electronics company, and then starting a medical device company that helps people improve walking, following stroke, and living with Parkinson's disease. We raised $60 million of venture capital into this state, created good paying jobs, and proved that you could do innovation here. I'm also a husband and a father. I have two sons, Oliver and Theodore, and I don't think that their generation has the same opportunity that I had coming from here in Maine. I also don't think that if you're a working class Mainer, it's affordable to live here anymore, and we need to turn that around. That's why I'm running for governor, and that's why I released a plan, Maine 2040, 70 pages, 130 policies, all focused around creating 50,000 foundational jobs that sell things across borders, taking advantage of the reindustrialization of America and the fourth industrial revolution, playing offense in this era. We need to fix the fundamentals I talk about in the plan, which many people have covered, but that's income tax, that's regulation, that's energy, and then we need to bet on our strengths. Forest products, it's an industry that still has 29,000 people that work in it. We need to grow it. We can't tear out the dams in central Maine. We need to make sure to protect it and then grow it. Maritime innovation, we've been building boats since the British liked our pine trees. We can build on that more. That's the biggest national security concern in the United States. Life science, we've gone from 6 to 10,000 people that work in that industry. I think if we bet on our strengths while fixing our fundamentals, we can create a lot of prosperity for the state of Maine and create a better future.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nirav Shah, and I'm honored to be here with everyone today. Prior to becoming and joining public service, I worked as an attorney for about 8 or 9 years and practiced law at a time when a lot of businesses were still trying to sort out how they would get a foothold, particularly in the life sciences and biotech sector. And I worked with a lot of those companies to help them understand how to navigate difficult and complex business environments, particularly when litigation was coming up. I then carried that same set of problem-solving skills with me as I entered public service, first as the director of the health department in Illinois, and then here in Maine as the director of the Maine CDC, particularly during a period of darkness for all of us. I then went on to the Biden administration and served as the #2 official at the US CDC, a gargantuan agency with tens of thousands of employees and a multi-billion-dollar budget. And then came back to Maine, and over the course of last summer, saw the ways in which our business climate, as well as many of the governmental institutions that we all rely upon, were being affected. And that's ultimately why, come October of last year, I decided to run and enter the race to be your next governor. Now, as it relates to the topics that we're going to be talking about today, and as we were teeing up the question, one of the questions was, what are you aiming for in your first 100 days? And for me, what I think about, and based on the conversations I've had with so many of you, including folks in this room, what rises to the top of every single one of those conversations is predictability and stability. And so what I'm prioritizing for my first 100 days are predictable, stable timelines, whether for permitting as well as regulation. What I'm hoping that I can do over the course of my time as governor is introduce a lot more predictability and stability so we all know the rules of the road and thus have a pathway for you all to survive and thrive. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much to Krista and John for moderating. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Shenna Bellows, and when I was 4 years old, my sister was 3, my brother was 2, my parents bought a piece of land in Hancock, Maine. My father had just started his own carpentry business. My mother was working nights in the light bulb filament factory in Sullivan, L. Scott's. In their spare time, first they pitched a tent, and in their spare time, they dug out an old cellar hole, and we lived in the basement that following winter. We didn't have electricity or indoor plumbing until I was in the 5th grade. That was a great year. But I worked my way through high school and college. I was a research associate at the Mount Desert Island Biological Laboratory. And when everybody else went home at 5 o'clock, I'd go to my next job as a Subway sandwich artist or waiting tables or in the kitchen at the local lobster pound. And after I graduated college, I went into economic consulting, and then the Peace Corps as a small business development volunteer, AmeriCorps, and then into a career in nonprofit management as the CEO of the ACLU of Maine, Learning Works, and the Holocaust and Human Rights Center of Maine. I ran for Secretary of State 5 years ago on a platform of modernizing services to better serve the people of Maine. And what I learned in that experience is what you do in your first 100 days matters. So in my first 100 days as Secretary of State, we initiated projects for appointments at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles so you can get in and out and on your way in 10 or 15 minutes. We implemented automatic voter registration so that when folks moving to Maine go to the BMV to get their license or their ID, they can register to vote at the same time. And that built confidence in the legislature, so when I brought back a strategic plan for modernizing the BMV, they were on board. Now, we did what's called self-funding. We looked inside and found savings, and that's the approach I'll bring as your next governor. I think we need to modernize state government. I think we need to invest in manufacturing. And I think we need to serve and make Maine more business-friendly for a stronger economy. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I need to lead some sort of stretching exercise here. It's been a long time. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Garrett Mason, and I'm from Lisbon Falls, the Moxie capital of the world. And I'm a husband, a father, a small business owner, a former legislator, a lifelong Mainer. And I'd really like to be your next governor. I didn't get my start in politics. I actually came from sports management. I used to work for the Portland Sea Dogs. I used to work in hockey with the Lewiston Maniacs, for those of you who remember them, at the Colisée in Lewiston. And it was my interactions with government in those places that led me to run for public office. And when I was 25 years old, I got elected to the state Senate and served in that role for 8 years. 4 of those years, I served as majority leader in the state Senate. But while we were there, we accomplished some wonderful things. I'm the only person on this stage that can say they actively lowered your income taxes. That's something I'm very proud of. I'm the only person on this stage that has actively moved the ball forward on things like school choice, which is important for subject matters like CTE and workforce training. And I'm the only person on this stage who has been able to work with both sides of the aisle in crafting a 2/3 budget, which is so crucial in making sure that everybody has a seat at the table. I think it's really important to answer the questions that John asked early on, so I'm going to take a stab at it. The first 100 days, I believe, start in August, and the reason for that is when the budget starts to be written for the next administration. So if I'm the Republican nominee for governor, I'm going to be dual tracking a budget, and I'm going to be dual tracking an election.
10 seconds.
That's really important. So I'm going to take the last one here. I think the greatest opportunity in manufacturing are our people. Maine people are hardworking people, and they need an opportunity to go ahead, and I'm going to make sure that happens as governor. So I'm Garrett Mason, and I appreciate your vote.
Okay. So now we'll move on to the moderated discussion topics portion of the agenda. And since Garrett has the microphone, we'll start with him. These will be 1-minute responses, but of course, I'm moderating, so I can talk longer than that. So I'd like to start out by talking about something that's on everybody's minds, and that is energy. Last month, longtime MFPC member Lumber Hardwood announced that it would be closing after 74 years of operation. When asked why, owner Stephen Lumber said, quote, Unfortunately, high operating costs and lack of saw logs due to the difficulties that the paper companies have endured are the main drivers of this decision. There seems to be a lot of hurdles lined up for businesses operating in Maine since the beginning of net energy billing and the increased costs for parts and supplies. This is the second forest industry business in Milo, a town with more than 86,000 solar panels, to close, citing high electricity costs over the span of just 2 years. There's also been significant issues with the cost and availability of natural gas, which caused one paper mill last winter to idle for an entire month, impacting not only its employees, but also the landowners and loggers during what is traditionally a peak harvest season. So my question is, if you become governor, how will you reduce and stabilize industrial energy costs in Maine?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question and a very unfortunate circumstance for that business. But I think energy is probably one of the top items in the affordability agenda for any governor in this state. And I can tell you that I am completely opposed to large-scale industrial solar and wind. It's been one of the primary drivers of increased costs in this state for a long time. We absolutely have to go after more natural gas. If you look up the ISO New England right now and what we're consuming, most of that is natural gas. We have to expand pipeline capacity. We have to work with the administration to get a waiver for the Jones Act so we can import more liquid natural gas into Massachusetts so we can use that at a cheaper rate from people in America. I would declare on day one an energy emergency, which would give incredible latitude to be able to work towards lower energy costs on all
10
fronts.
seconds.
And that's where I'm going to have to stop for now. So thank you.
So this is fun, because I completely disagree. I think that solar and wind have to be part of our future, as does biomass, but we're doing it wrong. We're balancing investments in solar on the backs of the ratepayers. And that's why we do have some of the highest electricity rates in the nation. But I think we have to go big on solar and wind. I think Maine is uniquely situated to be a high energy producer, but we also have to keep our energy in Maine for Maine and benefit from our production and not just be shipping it out to the other New England states without a profit. I think we need to invest in grid stabilization, and I think the governor needs to ensure more efficient permitting and procurement. And this is something I've got experience in at the BMV with making business processes more efficient. Finally, my economic new deal for Maine, which you can check out on my website at bellowsformaine.com, includes
5
capping
seconds.
profits at 6% for these international energy companies that are really hurting ratepayers, both industrial and residential. Thank you.
Well, let me first start by acknowledging that the sky-high cost of energy is functionally a hidden tax, a phantom tax, on all of the work that your corporations and businesses are doing. My approach is all of the above, all bets on the table. I'm in favor of additional renewable investments, both solar and on and offshore wind, because in the long term, they are zero marginal cost energy sources that once we have them in place will be part of Maine's energy future. But we also have to make sure that we are not exclusively relying upon those, because in the long run, that is a ways off. So in the interim, I am in favor of additional sources of energy, whether that is biomass, whether, yes, that is natural gas. It will only be through a broader energy portfolio that we're actually able to bring our prices down. Parts of the country that have done so have not doubled down on one source of energy to the exclusion of others. They have introduced all of them into their energy mix. That's what I believe we should do for Maine.
So Maine had the fastest growing electricity costs in the country last year by double anywhere else, and the fastest the last 7 years overall. And if you look at the mix of electricity, it's a $2.5 billion market. $250 million of that is for solar subsidies. We have overbuilt there. And then in the winter, it's intermittent. It doesn't work as well. You need to fire up places like Cousins Island at a really high rate, and that impacts all of us. And so we need to go search for base layer energy that's there when you want to turn the lights on. Where do you find that? You work to expand the Algonquin pipeline, which is the natural gas pipeline. It's a right-of-way that exists through Connecticut and Massachusetts. Double the diameter of the pipe, triple the diameter of the pipe. You can bring more in. That will lower costs. 2, we gotta work on buying more hydro from Quebec. 3, explore small modular nuclear, and then 4, biomass is a double whammy because it helps out with low-grade wood and energy all at the same time.
So I just announced a broad energy reduction affordability program, as I mentioned at Robbins Lumber yesterday. I'd encourage you to go to my website and read the details because I can't say it all in 1 minute. But some of the elements is, to relate to the stranded costs that we are seeing on ratepayers' backs. One thing is it's really easy for the legislature just to pass on costs to ratepayers rather than to absorb it in the budget. And a lot of these kind of social policies should be in the budget. But guess what? They don't show up. And so first thing I would propose is stop doing it. And secondly, if you're going to propose costs to go to the ratepayers, we need a ratepayer fiscal note on those costs so
10
that
seconds.
people know what those are. You can see other proposals I've got about creating a Maine Generation Authority and about limiting the outrageously high return on equity that is given to our investor-owned utilities.
Well, ideas. I'll tell you, it's simple. We have to go to the most practical sources that we can afford. You want to explore alternative fuels, I get it, but not at taxpayer expense. We already have ridiculously high electric costs. We got net energy billing on our bill. Did we vote for that? Did we approve that? It just appeared. That's it. So we had to bring the natural gas pipeline. Not only did we lose that factory, but we also lost Dragon Concrete. They couldn't get the natural gas pipeline in. That was a big company that invested a lot of money in the state of Maine, and they said, hey, we'll see you later. We're going to take our business elsewhere. So, and small modular nuclear reactors, it has to happen. Other states are doing it. So these are just common sense approaches to things that we really need. The bottom line is, if you go to your house and you flick the switch on and the light don't come on, you're going to want to be one upset individual. We have to take a common sense approach to energy. That will fix 90% of our problems that we have here in the state.
Okay, so for manufacturing and natural gas, you just need to create more storage. You buy it in the summer months when it's cheaper, and then the manufacturing has access to it. Electricity is not driven by natural gas prices or increases. It's half of what it was in 2022. It's all on the solar program. We have ratepayers paying $200 million in subsidy every year just for that program, and we're paying 30 cents a kilowatt hour, which is double the median average for the country. So we have to get that back in place. Repeal the issues of net energy billing that are hurting individuals, and then you get rid of the public policy charge, which is one of the things that is putting our businesses out of business. You got to change the standard offer, repeal the the hydro cap, reappoint the PUC, so we're doing things that are completely favorable to the folks of the state, and then you should have everything pretty much solved. Did I do that in under a minute?
You did.
I mean, I was waiting for the buzzer there.
It's like under 30.
10 seconds.
This is a huge challenge in Maine, and we absolutely need to do things differently. I've spent a lot of my career in the energy business. I understand how complicated it is, but I also understand where there are real opportunities. I outlined a ratepayers' bill of rights because I think it's critical that the next governor focus on how do we bring costs down for ratepayers. I think it starts with permitting and interconnection reform. Right now, other countries have figured out how to do it, protecting the environment while still allowing energy development. Other countries are developing wind and solar at a third of the cost that we are because we make it so hard on the front end. We also need to change the incentives for utilities. Right now, the only incentive is to build more things, which then costs more money. We need to give incentives, and they're doing it successfully in other parts of the country, in terms of more efficient use of the grid, more sensors, more storage, more capacity, which ends up lowering the cost ultimately for ratepayers. And then finally, we need better deals for Maine. We have had some policies, some people have talked about them in Maine, that have added costs to Maine ratepayers. We've got to be a heck of a lot smarter so that we don't try new things on the backs of ratepayers. I know it can be done, but it's got to be done thoughtfully and ideally by a governor who spent a lot of his life in the renewables business. Thanks.
This is a wonderful case study of what happens when you combine the recent trends in virtue signaling as a way of attaining power with one-party rule for a really long time. You get kind of a greatest hits of insider creep suffocating a market to the point where an entire society begins to die out. Obviously, I agree with my Republican colleagues that we need to shred the virtue signaling solar subsidies that suffocate our bills across the board. We need to allow businesses to come in and generate power behind the grid. We need to bring back biomass and every other supply that we have suffocated, and fight for the supply we haven't suffocated. I think that we have to think about who might do this. This is complicated, it's multi-layered, and so hopefully we'll be looking for somebody who is an outsider to the wall mold that has grown up, but is a change maker at scale, who's built thousands of jobs in Maine, who's helped thousands of businesses survive and thrive, because I think that is the key to making each of the areas of wall mold growth, healthcare, expansion, at cost, energy, et cetera.
So I have a 25-point plan, and you can go look at it. I actually will start by saying I love wood. I grew up in a home with no electric heat, and I cut 4-cord of wood every fall, and it worked very well. So we need to relook wood as a renewable, and then get rid of net energy billing, complete the constitutional pipeline for natural gas that's cheaper, link the Iroquois, uncap the hydro, absolutely save Sappi, do not pull those 4 dams, take the energy office from 22 people down to 2 people, sweep the PUC of political hacks and put on engineers and economists and those who know utility expertise. And then we need to look again at reopening competition in this state, thinking in terms of pro-business, not anti-business, and to agree with a lot of the other folks on this panel, also small modular nuclear thorium reactors, very timely. It's going to take us 2 or 3 years to get there. They're in beta tests now. Could save us an enormous amount of money. We need to think about pro-business, not pro-government.
Excellent. Do you guys want to stand up and stretch? Do you want to stand up and stretch? All right, you're good. Thank you for that. So the next topic is workforce development. Workforce continues to be one of the most significant challenges facing Maine manufacturers. Employers are competing for talent, managing rising costs, and adapting to new policies, including paid family and medical leave, all while trying to remain competitive. At the same time, there is a long-term need to strengthen the talent pipeline and ensure that more Maine people are aware of and prepared for careers in manufacturing and the skilled trades. If elected governor, how would you address workforce challenges in Maine, including labor availability, the impact of policies like PMFL, and strengthening the pipeline into manufacturing and the trades? And we might as well just start right down here.
So I think we have suffered a cultural decline in 25 years from hardworking, which is what everybody knew Mainers as, to not hardworking and permitting people to just sit on the couch and collect money. More than half the state's on entitlements. So the first thing we do is we think constructively about rebuilding the idea that hard work is at the cornerstone of everything. If between 18 and 65 and you are able-bodied and you don't have children and you're not disabled, you will be encouraged to either work 20 hours a week, volunteer 20 hours a week, or go to school 20 hours a week, which incidentally is a win-win, and it's what we're doing at the federal level, but not here. In addition, you need to get back into the schools. At the 7th and 8th grade level, you start putting trades back in the schools. I had trades, I had IA, you got to get it done. And whether it's mandatory, whether it's available, it needs to be something the state encourages, not discourages. And then you just need to get out of the entitlement idea and start pulling the incentives. I always say I want to cut taxes, cut crime, and get the nonsense out of schools. Let us get back, instead of having schools where you've got 75% of the 4th graders who can't read, have outcomes be the determinant of what we're after. We're not interested in activism. I know some folks on this panel are. I'm not. I'm interested in a productive, prosperous future for our kids. And at the end of the day, that's where it begins. It begins with education, lower taxes, get rid of the regulations, mandates, all these imperatives on both the towns, the counties, which raise property taxes, and also on the businesses, and get us back to common sense, pro-business thinking.
I remember when I opened, the state said, we've got job training program. And I met the nice guy, and I said, please don't help me. I really don't need your help, sir. But if you could possibly fire yourself and reduce my taxes, that would be great. When some people in our state government try to solve the decline in our economy, they think of programs that they can create. And I have to say, as someone who has built 1,000 jobs in the state, the freedom to move, the input costs are vastly more valuable than special programs that wrap around you like well-meaning manacles of an octopus. It's really important that we get a governor that understands this, and that we strip back the programming and do the obvious, the electrical costs, the healthcare costs, the housing costs, and the tax costs. That's the job. Simple beats smart 7 days a week when you're in a crisis, and we're in one.
Yeah, our workforce challenge is very real. Maine's population is relatively flat, but the problem is we're all getting older. And so we end up actually shrinking our workforce every year by tens of thousands of people. To me, it's a couple of things that are really important. Number one, as has been said, we need more young people in this state, and the only way you get young people to come is by having a place where you can afford. So we've got to build more housing so that they can afford to live here. We've got to work on health care so that they can access it. We've got to work on childcare and all those other things that make families come here. And finally, we've got to work on education. People move for good schools. And right now, Maine schools are in the low 40s, and that's a place where I worry a lot of people aren't going to want to move. So to me, the first piece we've got to focus on is how do we make our schools better? With accountability, with making sure that kids are starting with reading by the time they finish in 3rd grade, and then moving on to training in middle school, in high school. Right now, I think we have 300,000 people in this state who have no credential of any value. I think we can do a lot more in terms of training for people so that they can access the jobs, and that there's more connection, especially between business and some of our colleges, like Thomas is doing a great job right now, so that there are people who are trained for the jobs that we have both today and tomorrow.
Okay, so trade school is obviously incredibly important. You have to drive more folks into the trades. We have a desperate need for that, and the state can do a better job of that. But to drive the overall workforce in the state, you have to have a reason to work in Maine. And right now, we're not supporting the fundamental building blocks that drive people to open businesses in Maine. You could talk to anybody who's looking at doing business in Maine or doing business in Maine, and they will struggle to tell you why this is a good state to do business. So you have to turn that around. Not enough time to go over all the things we can do there from that standpoint, but there's a tremendous amount of things. You need a very pro-growth, pro-business-based governor, and then again, you have to get Maine off of this government dependency aspect we're on. Over 400,000 people are on state services, 4% lower than labor force participation rate. Give folks the opportunity for economic freedom, get them off of government dependency, do it in a positive way, and then things are going to start to change.
Well, workforce is something I've dealt with my whole life. I had a very large company with a lot of people. But back then when I would not have someone that didn't do their job, I could fire them. Now you've got to be worried about your unemployment compensation rate going up. You've got to be worried about paid family medical leave. You've got all these things that are going against you as a business. And when I fired somebody back then, I could hire somebody the next day. We can't do it. We can't do it. These people don't, we got people that don't want to work, and what is it that creates jobs? Businesses. Well, you want young people to stay? You got to have an environment that's going to allow businesses to succeed. And if the businesses can't succeed, then bottom line, the jobs won't be there, and if it's not affordable to be in the state of Maine, guess what? The businesses will not come and invest in our state. We have to change our model. We have to have affordable energy. That is the bottom line answer to every question you're going to ask today.
I think the issue with getting workers in Maine overall and getting young people to Maine does rely on, as Angus said, first affordability. We all have family members who want to live in Maine, and they can't afford to live where the jobs are. You all have people that work for you that are struggling. Housing costs are way too high. Childcare is unavailable, and we need more housing. We need more available childcare. All of these issues are interrelated. Yes, we should do work promoting the trades. Used to be a dirty word to get into welding. Well, guess what? You can make a lot more money as a welder than you can in a lot of white-collar jobs, and we need more welders. The paid family medical leave was a question. That was a gold-plated program coming out of the gate. And, I'm worried about its sustainability. I think Maine's next governor is going to have to look at that program and make sure it's sustainable, because I worry that it's going to be driving people away from Maine and businesses away from Maine too.
I think we've entered into a world where manufacturing is where some of the best jobs will be in the future. I remember having a conversation with my father a couple years back when ChatGPT came out, and I showed it to him, and he played around with it. He's barely graduated high school, blue-collar guy, and he looks at me and he's like, "Owen, look, how's your master's degree feel right about now? Like, this thing can do everything you can do, and plumbers can do everything you can't. They're going to take over the world." And now, where we sit right now, I think the surefire way to have a career is to go to build something physical and do something physical. I think if we celebrate that, and we talk about that, and we give our people the aspiration that that is the noble thing to go and do, you're going to get more and more workforce in. And we do talk about the trades a long time out here, saying, well, we should go have more people be in the trades, more people be in the trades. But as an engineer, I actually found a problem. We have more demand for our CTE programs than we have supply of slots. Let's open more slots. That would help solve that problem.
As I've been on the campaign trail grappling with this question, my first thought was, boy, it's how do we entice young people to move to Maine? But the more young folks I talked to, the more data I looked at, realized that's not really the right question. Young folks want to move to Maine. It's not a question of how to entice them, it's how to make it easier for them to get here. And as my colleagues have mentioned, the 4 things that have come up over and over and over again, as I've talked to younger folks, are housing, healthcare, childcare, education. Housing, healthcare, childcare, education. If we can make inroads on any of them, let alone all of them, to make housing a little bit cheaper, healthcare not completely broken, childcare just a click more affordable, then young people will find it more feasible to come here to Maine versus the other states that they can choose from. But here's one thing I'll throw out in my last 10 seconds. We always think about workforce as a younger person's thing. There are already a lot of older Mainers here in the state who want to get back into the workforce. We have an opportunity to put them back in the workforce as well.
So my mother worked in a greenhouse for about 20 years, no benefits, no health care. And at age 49, she looked around and she decided she needed to do something different. So she went back to school, first through adult ed, then the University of Maine at Augusta, then the University of Maine at Orono, graduated summa cum laude with an RN, and became a home health care nurse during the pandemic. So when we talk about workforce, we need to create pathways of opportunity, both for our young people and for older Mainers, to enter into manufacturing and these high-paying jobs. And that includes investment in our schools. I intend to be Maine's education governor. I think that's why the Maine teachers have endorsed me as their #1 ranked candidate. I think we need to invest in the industrial arts and trades in our high schools. That's really important. I think we need to continue the free community college program, but we need to expand it to the University of Maine system so that their young people who are poor, as I was, wanting to go into engineering, that they can. And we need to go on to think about again, those older Mainers like my mom, because Maine needs to be a place, a destination, not just for vacationers, but a place that people can afford to live, work, and prosper.
Yeah, I think the workforce development piece of our entire economy is very important, and I agree with a lot of what folks have said. That's the benefit of being the last one in the line, right? About affordability. I think if you fix that problem on all levels, that you're really going to move the ball forward. But I want to talk some specifics about education in general. I believe in school choice. I believe that charter schools can have, specifically virtual charter schools, can have a role to play in partnering up with our CTEs to provide more individualized learning. I think that one of the other things I'm really concerned about is our apprenticeship programs. In the past few years, we have had apprenticeship programs be more specialized and aimed at basically, just to be honest, union-only programs that are being that will get the reimbursement from the state. So I want to make sure that if you have an apprenticeship program, that you are able to have the state help you through that program. I think if we start to solve some of these workforce issues, we're going to be able to get people to actually be able to stay here, live here, and thrive here.
All right. I think we'll mix things up and maybe start with Senator Bennett and go that way this time, so that you're not always first or last. Surprise? Yep. Okay, so next I want to talk about regulatory and tax policy. As you know, volatility in Augusta makes it exceedingly difficult to plan for large manufacturing investments that take decades to recoup. For example, this year lawmakers considered a supplemental budget that would have eliminated an important tax program utilized by 60 forest products businesses. Had it passed as presented, it would have resulted in an immediate and retroactive tax increase of $4.7 million this year alone. Our members rallied, and fortunately, we were able to defend the program, at least for non-retail equipment. Another dam example is Shawmut on the Kennebec. After extensive back and forth, with Maine DEP over the renewal of the water quality certificate, Brookfield made the understandable decision to pull its application and sell the asset to an entity with plans to remove the structure. While all sides seem committed to maintaining the water needs of Sappy's flagship mill, there is no engineering solution to do so without the impoundment created by the dam. The current uncertainty surrounding the largest wood-consuming mill in the Northeast is impacting long-term planning and investment decisions throughout the entire supply chain. These are just two examples. There are many more. So my question is, what would you do to make Maine a more predictable and business-friendly place to grow, invest, and create jobs?
Thanks for the question. I have to say that the one thing that business people want, and people making investment decisions, and I've been there as a CEO, is predictability. Maine's next governor needs to prioritize consistency over chaos. And we're getting a lot of chaos from government at all levels these days. Krista's talking about the BETTER program. The governor proposed, actually in a supplemental budget, in a short legislative session, a major shift of decades over this program. And she proposed to eliminate it. It's outrageous. We can't be making these proposals in this disorganized, dysfunctional way. And yes, part of that passed. Retail facilities who've been relying on that for years lost
10
out.
seconds.
You know, all across the state, I heard this thing, Huhtamaki, where Krista, you took me into Huhtamaki or hosted us there. I've heard it from Sappy, I've heard it from everyone. They're just looking for consistency because the investors are looking for as little political risk as possible since there's so much other risk they have to deal with. So consistency over chaos.
This way?
Yes, sir.
It's called the pendulum of politics, right? The Democrats get in and they make all kinds of restrictions. The Republicans get in and what do? We eliminate the restrictions. We have 135,000 regulations in the state of Maine. It's ridiculous. It's just absurd that we have this many regulations. And every one of those regulations costs whatever business they affect money, right? And this is what it is. It's an affordability factor. So we just need a common sense approach to simplicity, right? What's right and what's wrong. You can't have it where you're going to attract a company or a big corporation to the state of Maine is going to create 500 or 1,000 jobs if they don't know what's going to happen when the next person is governor or if the Democrats or the Republicans have control of the House and the Senate. We need consistency and it has to be made law. So the policies that I'll put into place, I will do everything I can to codify them to law.
All right, so first, the Shawmut Dam deal is essentially the dumbest deal I've ever seen in my life. That never should have happened, and it just has to be killed any way you talk about it. The other issue is you have to have a pro-business focus with, a combination of cutting spending. It took 200 years to get to a $7 billion budget in this state, and it only took 7 more years to get to a $12 billion budget. That's $5 billion that came from all of you, came from businesses, and right now you have situations like that tax that Krista mentioned because the state is going after every tax it can possibly find because you're increasing spending almost $1 billion a year. So that needs to be turned around. You need to understand the balance with pro-growth policies, slightly limited government because we're in deep now, so we've got to unwind it as best we can, and then get us back to the place where people can take a breath, we support business, we support individuals, and then we go up from there.
I spent most of my life building things, and the thing that I found is successful is by bringing everybody together onto common ground and sharing a vision about how you're going to accomplish it. Then everybody moves forward together. And every one of those projects took a long time to build, longer usually than a single administration. And so part of why I'm running is to think about how do we make sure that there is enough predictability so that these projects can withstand a change in administration. David just talked about Democrats do this, then the Republicans do that. To me, what's really important is that, well, I'm hoping a Democrat, is the governor, but brings lots of people into the conversation so that we create rules and regulations and decisions that have some long-term sustainability, that have buy-in from Republicans and Democrats so that we can get things done. Because I think we've got a lot of common issues in terms of how do we build more housing, how do we make our schools better, how do we lower our healthcare costs. And if we can do those things in some kind of bipartisan way, I think we'll really have an opportunity to make a real difference here in Maine so that we don't have as much volatility and so that businesses do have the predictability that they really crave. I completely agree. The worst thing is a long maybe, and we really need a better job of not pulling the rug out. And Maine's reputation, unfortunately, across the country is that we have earned a reputation of changing the rules midway. And we've got to stop doing that, and I think the best way to do it is to find some common ground and move forward.
Yeah, I don't think we're at the bring everybody together place. I think we're at the George Orwell bad dream turned into real life place. And this Brookfield example is a beautiful case in point. This is a company that makes hydropower that had a bullet put in its head by the state government in the name of, wait for it, environmentalism. A hydropower company was shot in the head by the state in the name of environmentalism. When the state plays such a large role, you get to places where Orwellian moments come true. They're everywhere in Maine. You can do a crime and the police can't take you to jail if you identify as homeless. These are things that other places, if you say them, the bartender cuts you off like you're crazy.
10 seconds.
10 seconds?
Yes, sir.
It's probably enough. I'm suggesting that it's not a time for all holding hands, but getting really serious about saying, we have an emergency, we've gone nuts, and we need to grow up or our state's economy will die.
So 2 observations and 3 recommendations. First, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. We don't need more foolish consistency. I will also say that we're in an odd environment in which common ground is great to find, but I find it ironic that we're talking about a Democrat legislature that literally passes budgets without any consideration whatsoever for the Republicans. So we're not going to get, Jonathan's right, we're not going to get to common ground. 3 basic observations to get us, or recommendations, to get us where we belong. We need to roll back hundreds, a legislator told me recently, thousands of unfunded mandates on towns and counties that will roll back property taxes, that will allow seniors to stay on fixed incomes in their homes and young people to get that low rent place that then saves money and gives them a real home later, like we had, American dream. Second thing, we need to cut the income tax. And people say, oh, Bobby, you're so unrealistic, $4 billion. No, when you go from $7 billion to almost $13 billion, I have CPAs and former senior people in this state saying, yeah, you can pull $4.5 billion likely over 4 years out of this. You need to do it. You need to cut the spending out of that 800-page budget. And the last thing you need to do is roll back regulations. And it won't take me 9 seconds to roll them all back.
All right, we'll go to Honorable Garrett Mason.
Well, thank you. Well, I think one of the things that I would like to say to you all is that you have fantastic representatives on either side of the stage who fought valiantly for the bill that Krista was talking about, which was LD 195. And what that would have allowed you to do is it would have allowed you to save up profits over time, and when you wanted to make some sort of infrastructure investment, you would have been able to have access to that cash over the subsequent years that you have saved for it. I think that's a fantastic plan. I think it's one that I would support, and representing a different organization, I testified in favor of that. So it's regrettable that didn't happen. So that's one thing I would support. And the other thing is I think we need to take a hard look at the reasons why we didn't pass tax conformity. That makes it very difficult for businesses and individuals. They have to file different sets of returns anyways, but why make them harder? So that's something I'd look at as well. And as far as the dam goes, if I'm governor, I will do everything that I can to make sure that dam stays in place and fight off the removal of that.
So there is an area that I agree with Republicans on, and that is that there is too much waste in the state budget, and that there is red tape in state government that we need to eliminate. And I'm the only one on this stage with experience doing so at the Department of Secretary of State, both in elections and in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. In the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, on my first day in office, a car dealer called me and said, "You've got to do something about titles." It was a completely paper-based process, and we had months-long backlogs. I eliminated the backlog, and we implemented electronic lien entitling. We got rid of fax machines for the car insurance industry that was having to send everything into the BMV by fax or paper. That saved a lot of money and a lot of time. Now, we just recently rolled out a BMV branch, a mobile unit, that you can drive to rural communities. We deployed it in Belfast and Piscataquis County. And what I'm proposing as governor is a one-stop shop for businesses so that we simplify the paperwork, that we cut red tape, and that we reduce the challenging regulatory environment we have in Augusta. Thank you.
As I mentioned at the top, one of the pieces that has come up in virtually every meeting with business owners, small, medium, and large, has been the need for predictability and stability. So that is what I will prioritize as governor. I've heard from so many folks, and you and your colleagues, who tell me stories about the way that the rug was taken out from underneath them, or that the rule that they had operated on for years was changed, and now they were being asked to pay back taxes retroactively. What I will focus on is that predictability and stability going forward, whether that's around regulatory reform, permitting reform, or an area that I've worked on when I was in the Midwest, which is harmonizing regulations both across the state as well as across the region. There's no reason why the food code in Maine needs to be different from the food code next door, the same with building and electrical codes. As for the dam, I supported the removal of the dam. There are engineering questions that will have to be answered, but we as a country and as a species have answered and figured out engineering problems that are far more difficult than this one. I have every bit of confidence that we will figure this one out as well.
So Maine currently sits at 45th in business climate and 50th in new businesses per capita, according to the Maine Jobs Council report in 2024. Like, we're sitting in a moment where I look at this both as a turnaround job for the state and a growth job. We need to grow jobs at the same time. And so as a turnaround job, you know, I don't like consistency as a word. I like we got to really make some changes, but I do like predictability, because that's why I released my plan, Maine 2040, to talk about how we get to the point where we turn around and we grow. Things we need to do. One, we need to make an instant cut to the income tax and phase it out over 8 years, and there's a plan to do that. Two, on regulations, there's 135,000 small businesses and 135,000 regulations. We're going to, for every new rule proposed in my administration, we're going to cut 2, so that naturally is going to go down and be more easy to operate. And then we're going to be transparent about where we spend the money in the state government, so the people of Maine know where it is. We're going to fix the business climate. We need to turn it around while we make the bets that I talked about earlier.
All right, thank you very much. So this next topic is on education. I know a lot of you had alluded to education prior in the other questions. Educational outcomes are directly tied to Maine's long-term economic competitiveness. At the same time, many employers are struggling to find skilled workers, and too few students are being exposed to careers in manufacturing and the trades. So the question is, what is your plan to improve educational outcomes in Maine, and how would you encourage more students to pursue careers in manufacturing and the trade? So Owen, why don't we start with you and go that way?
Back to back? Yeah. So I have said in the plan, I've said this many times, my vision is to be the reading governor for the state of Maine. Right now, 1 in 4 fourth graders can read at grade level. We were 4th in the country when I went through the schools. We're now near last. Right? The beauty of the United States is people have figured it out. Mississippi solved this problem. What did they do? It didn't take them more money to solve the problem, maybe a little bit, but not a lot more money. They passed the Science of Reading Bill, which says that you must teach evidence-based curriculum. It still lets teachers pick curriculum, so you have local control, but it's got to be proven to work. According to MEPRI, which is an independent institute in Maine, 50% of the curriculum right now is proven not to work, and then we wonder why the kids can't read. I focus on reading because you learn to read up to the 3rd grade, you read to learn the rest of your life. You're not going to be a very good plumber, trade, engineer if you can't
10
read. I
seconds.
think we can make a difference on that. We can make a difference in 3 years on those scores. We do that, we prove we can solve something, we'll go solve more things.
Just to prove that bipartisanship is very much alive, I agree with every single thing that Mr. McCarthy said. And so I'll take it another step further. Another reason why Maine schools have also fallen significantly in the ranks in a way that other states have really turned their education systems around. In addition to focusing on reading, I will add math as well, but chronic absenteeism. Which has really become a bigger and bigger issue in Maine. It's one that Mississippi, Tennessee, and others have really addressed head on. We've got opportunities to do so here. I know that everyone in this room is a big fan and supporter of CTE, as am I. That's another area for us, to your question about how we encourage more folks to go into the trades. I don't think we need a new special program that encourages folks to consider a career in manufacturing and the trades. The economic case is very strong already. Now it's a question of making sure that those who want to go into those fields have the training opportunities available to them.
I think education is one of the top 3 priorities of the next governor, and I've rolled out an Education New Deal for Maine on my website. I'll just say this, but for Hancock Grammar School and Ellsworth High School, I wouldn't be sitting here today as Maine's first female Secretary of State and a Democratic candidate for governor. I owe everything to my public education here in Maine. So I think it's really important. However, we are funding education in the most regressive, absurd way possible on the backs of the property taxpayers, and we're creating neighbor against neighbor fight, right? Parents of kids who want better quality schools for their kids, and folks who are worried about losing their homes. So I'm proposing a statewide moratorium on property taxes for Maine residents. And I'm proposing doubling the property taxes of out-of-staters who are gobbling up our property,
10 seconds.
because 1 in 6 Maine homes is a vacation home. And I'm proposing that in my first budget, introduced in January of '27, I will introduce full funding for special education, for the free lunch program, and increasing teacher pay so we can recruit teachers in our schools. That's just a little bit of my Education New Deal, and I look forward to talking more. It's important.
Yeah, so I think we're all going to hit on different subjects as we go along. Education is a big one. But I do tend to agree on the reading piece. I mean, it is so imperative. Believe it or not, before I got a business degree, I went to school to be a kindergarten teacher. That did not work out, but for a lot of reasons. But part of that is you learn really early on that if you can get a kid to read in kindergarten, they improve so quickly. One of the things I'm really concerned about in government right now is child development services. The waiting lists are far too long for kids that are having difficulty with their speech and hearing, and if you can catch those problems very early, the outcomes are so much better. So I'm really focused on CDS and making sure that kids who are in preschool and before have the ability to be able to fix problems that could hurt them when they get into kindergarten. So there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse there. We've seen that, and I'd like to clean that up because I think it would add to the entire education system.
So Maine's education system is in a complete free fall. We are in a place we've never been. In 1992, we were the best in the country. Our outcomes were what we measured, not inputs. So we've doubled the amount of money and ended up, by one counting 50th in the country, by another the 41st in the country. Understand, I graduated from an unaccredited high school. My whole family, by the way, is educators. My mother was a remedial reading teacher, grandmother principal. 2 of my siblings teach. I graduated from an unaccredited high school and survived at Dartmouth College, Oxford University, Columbia Law School, and beyond. Why? Because this school system was awesome. Instead of doing that, we bulked it up with administrators. They need to be fired. We need to cut in half the education department. We need to go back to empowering teachers and thinking about kids with outcomes, not a curriculum focused on activism and political, I don't know what you're going to call it, soft education, not real education. You only prosper when you know math and reading and science and history and facts and shop. Get it back in the schools.
We know the numbers, 1st to 41st, or by other accounts worse. We know the creep, the expansion of superintendents and administrators, and ancillary programs. And we know the ball hiding, the inability to find our reading scores on state DOE websites. This is a turnaround situation, narrow mission, focused on one thing. As Owen said, I agree, thing one should be reading, 4th grade. If we can't get that, school gets fired, money goes to the families. And we can take the cap off of charter schools, we can take the cap off of homeschooling, we can take the cap off of religious schools, we can let people go to other towns, but we have got to put pressure on these schools. I don't mind providing them some resources, but the mission must be
10
reading.
seconds.
To do that, we need, at Athena we had a program called More Disruption Please, and we would invite companies to sell to our customers, and they would compete with us, and we would lose accounts, not the whole account, but products, to competitors. But it made us a better company. We have a monopolistic insider system in education, and what we need to do is do a little more disruption, please.
So my education plan is called Back to Being the Best. You have heard all of the statistics. It starts, and I talk about students and teachers and community. On the student front, reading, we've beaten it to death, but unfortunately we still haven't solved it. And I think that's really important. The next piece, though, is also about training. We do a pretty good job in a couple of places, St. George, Gorham, Brunswick, but those are individual places, and we've got to figure out how to leverage that and do it statewide so that every kid, by the time they graduate from high school, either has a job, an apprenticeship, a training program, or a pathway to college. I know that we can do it, and that should be Maine's commitment to our kids so that, again, we have the best trained, best educated workforce in the state. The next piece I would talk about, though, is about what are we doing in our communities so that they know how the schools are doing. I think there's got to be transparency about how they're doing, because then you can deploy the energy and the resources and the support so that businesses get involved, parents get involved, community leaders get involved to help the schools that are struggling. And again, to copy the Mississippi path, where you get tutors in, you get mentors for the teachers, you help the people who are struggling rather than just punish them, so that everybody in our public schools succeeds as a result.
Okay, so I'm still dealing with the education system day to day because I have kids in school. The issue we've had with the schooling is the change from academics to social emotional learning. That is a failed experiment. It is not doing good for our kids. 70% increase in investment and some of the worst test scores we ever had. So we do have to redirect the curriculum guidelines. Evidence-based high-quality instruction materials, as was mentioned, is the way to go. You do need to stop teaching ideology in the schools. I can't tell you how many assignments my daughter has come home from English class that talked about Trump, and just the other day one on how to be a good protester, to the point that you will go to jail. Okay, we have to stop trying to teach kids what to think. We need to teach them how to think. And once you get back to the basics in this area and refocus our attentions on what needs to happen, you're going to see greatly improved results, happier
10
kids,
seconds.
more people staying in Maine because they can succeed with a good education.
Well, as governor, I can tell you the first thing I'll do is get rid of DEI, SEL, and CRT. I have 8 grandchildren getting ready to enter the school system, and I'm telling you, I'm scared. They're being taught. I had a 5-year-old granddaughter came back. She said, "Papa," they were reading me a book about a little boy wearing a girl's dress called "A Boy in a Tangerine Dress." She says, "I didn't want to listen to it. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it." She knew how upsetting it was. So, and then she says, "But Papa, please don't do anything because they won't like me." So here you have a child, 5 years old, innocent mind, there to learn, as being taught things I don't want her to learn, and also learning fear of retribution. We have 240,000 school-age children in the state of Maine. 170,000 of them are attending public schools. We have 190 superintendents in the state of Maine. That's one for every 800 children. One per every 800 children. Other states, they have one superintendent per 40,000 children. Why in God's name do we have this top-heavy administration? The Mississippi Miracle, I want a Maine miracle. I know we can do it. Mainers are great, and if we get together and we work together, we can have a Maine miracle. They were scared to death to implement the Mississippi miracle, and I'll tell you what, they're happy as hell that they did. Their success rate is through the roof, and that's what I want for the state of Maine.
I'm actually really happy to hear the focus of all the candidates on this really critical issue and a lot of the common problems we've talked about. I'd just say teachers, kids, parents. We are hemorrhaging 1,800 teachers a year, okay? The classroom is a different place than it was when I was in school. And there's a lot of burdens being placed on teachers right now. And we need to, yes, pay them more. The minimum wage for teachers is too low, but that doesn't solve the problem. We also need to give them working places where they feel supported and they can get their jobs done the way they want to do it. The kids, as we've heard, are not learning. They're not learning numeracy. They're not learning literacy. They need to learn to read. And in order to read to learn, as you've heard, we also need to understand that when the kids are going into school, they need help. And Garrett touched on this. A lot of kids need some support going in today's world. And in terms of parents, we need to get parents welcome again in their school's education. A lot of parents are put off by the systems that have been created in our public school systems. I just have to say, though, the Maine's governor under this Constitution is fairly constrained as to what a governor can directly do because education is handled under our Constitution at the local level. And so I, as governor, will appoint a very respected and bold commissioner who will lead and who the superintendents will follow to move Maine in a new direction.
Okay. So now we're going to transition just a little bit. So both organizations asked our members for some questions in advance that could be asked here today. To ask that question on behalf of the Maine Forest Products Council, we have Joel. Joel is the chair of our manufacturing committee, and he will ask that question.
Thank you, Krista. Here in, excuse me, here in Maine, our mills compete in a global marketplace. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about a big mill or a small mill. They all compete with mills all over the world, and a lot of them that are coming from areas that are a lot more cost competitive than what we have here in Maine. A lot of these mills are going to require modernization to be able to stay competitive in the marketplaces to come. Would you support tax incentives, financing tools, or public-private partnerships to help these mills upgrade equipment so that they can remain efficient and viable, making the products that their customers need and supporting the communities in which they work and live?
And you get to pick who goes first.
Mr. King, I think we'd like you to go first.
Coming down. The answer is yes, we need to be supporting our heritage industries, right? We have some great industries here in Maine, in our fiber, in our oceans, and we have some great skill sets in our state as well in terms of shipbuilding, in terms of working in the forests, in terms of serving tourists. And so I think it's really important that the state focus in on where does Maine have competitive advantages, including in those industries, and then what can we do? Right now, FAME does a pretty good job, and I think other, FAME and other organizations like that, MTI, do a pretty good job in terms of supporting new businesses and supporting that kind of growth. And I think Maine's got to continue to lean in on the industries where we do have real advantage. I would want to make sure that we don't lean in on and put our thumb on the scale of something where Maine doesn't naturally compete. I think that's probably a mistake. But in terms of where we really do have a long history and long advantages, I think it's very important that the state lean in on workforce, on a lot of the other things we've talked about so far. Because you're right, absolutely, a lot of that modernization has to happen. I'm not a big fan of sort of government involvement in industry in general, but in certain circumstances, again, where Maine's got an advantage, I'm supporting.
I'm going to go with hell no. And I'm as close to an industrialist, corporate CEO, ran a company through IPO, came to the state, got little tax gimmicks to get in here. We don't need more gimmickry that you have to know somebody. I can't stand hearing particularly the Democrats, run and say, I have an open door policy, I will listen to you. Well, that's because it's so complicated, you need to get in the governor's door. I have an open door policy too, but you won't need the door because the rules will be clean, the taxes will be low, it will be an attractive place to come. Every time we add a little state program, there's a whole patron-client network that builds up around it and adds to the bloat that in some we are now experiencing. What we need to do is be brave, shrink Augusta, cut those rules, and then don't also ask for a little side set of breaks ourselves. And we will do so much better than whatever those little programs the state might give us instead.
So Jonathan and I, of course, agree on everything, but I'm going to disagree on this. I'll just say, hell yes. Tax incentives and a tax code that help to recapitalize, accelerate depreciation, do all the things that get people to reinvest in businesses, particularly when we understand that we do have labor costs, then we do need to train, and we do need to get our education system back on track, but we do need to recapitalize the industrial base in this state. It's fundamental. Drive anywhere in the state, and I've been every corner of this state. You see that what we're missing is the fundamental elements of a tax code that encourage business and regulations that are rolled back to encourage business, not the reverse.
Distinguish between tax code and tax incentive. Tax code, yes. Little tax incentive gimmick, no.
Well, I'm not going to swear in a church, so I'll just say yes. But the bottom line on all of it is that we do compete in a global marketplace in this industry, absolutely. And you have companies like Canada, you have companies like Sweden and Finland who are heavily subsidizing their industries beyond a tax credit. And so we have to do something to make sure that you're competitive. That's why I did support LD 195. That's why I supported the Pine Tree Development Zones when I was in the legislature. It's why I support DeerGo incentives. Until we're able to lower the cost of doing business in Maine, we have to provide those incentives for you to be able to compete in a global marketplace. I totally agree with that. Tree growth programs, we heard some interesting stuff at the forum that we were in Samoset that I learned today. So yes, I am in favor of some of those programs, but eventually I'd like you to just be able to compete because the regulations and the taxes are so low in Maine that it's a bad deal to not compete here.
Short answer, yes. And what I will say is I think we do need to increase access to capital to businesses in our state and grow our markets, especially for forest products. And I think we made a big mistake in not putting mass timber or laminated lumber into the baseline budget. I would take the $50 million proposal and not bond it, but put it into my budget so that we can create a new market. Because with this housing boom, with the needs for housing, the fact that Bowdoin College and Portland Museum of Art are going out of state or even overseas to get their mass timber for their building, for sustainable building, is insane given the quality of our forest products and the lagging industry here in our state. So I think this is a role for government. I think access to capital, my economic New Deal for Maine, includes the Maine Transformation Fund for startup entrepreneurs. I've been meeting with entrepreneurs at Startup Maine. I've been meeting with Focus Maine to talk about how do we grow the economy.
In addition to Maine's mills having to compete with those in other countries where there are significant government subsidies, they have to compete, as you well know better than I, with mills in other parts of the country where the tax environment is already more favorable. So my approach is that right now we are in a world where we're going to have to run as fast as possible just to stay in the same place. So with respect to the 3 buckets of incentives that you laid out, investment tax credit, without a doubt, and I've heard from so many business owners about the way that not only has that just rewarded decisions they were going to make, but rather actually caused them to expand their capital. A program that's just rewarding entities for decisions they were going to make anyways, not actually generating new value. But I have heard very clearly from folks who have said, no, this changed our strategic direction. So there, yes. Secured low-income interest capital pool, maybe, maybe not. I know there's recent legislation that put that into place. Public-private partnership, when applicable, usually for research, but much more limited.
So I talked about in the beginning that forest products is one of the strategic areas we need to make a big bet on. And when I say that, I mean let's say in the Department of Economic Development, we're going to have a team of hunters that knows the industry really well, but also meets with the executives, including the governor, will meet on a yearly basis in my Maine Means Business Initiative. We can then there's a lot of existing programs out there that FAME has that we can tailor to the industry and make sure the nuances work for those, and we're going to continue those, the new market tax credits, leading into opportunity zones, everything that we have, and make sure everyone is fully aware of that. We're also going to make sure that the MEIF funding, which is on the research side, for the forest product side, there's an increase in that, because I think the more innovation that we could have coming into the space, the better we're going to be able to compete while we bring energy costs down. And then finally, I have a concept of a forest products incubator that states like Alabama have done that we can do here to really bring things in such that we can rebuild the industry here.
Great ideas here. I have to say to the question, yes. But let me just elaborate. We have some devastated communities in Maine. Lincoln, Millinocket, East Millinocket, our traditional mill towns. They've got wonderful assets up in these locations, and they need help. They need help rebuilding devastated industries. And I think in a productive way, government can, and state government, particularly the governor very specifically, can use these resources like tax credits, like special rate contracts on electricity in order to attract businesses to Maine. I will be a vigorous and assertive governor as ambassador, chief ambassador for the state of Maine, to try to, particularly in those devastated communities, bring new businesses in. I'll use every tool at my disposal. And I will also listen. Because, Steve Smith, the ex-CEO of L.L. Bean, used to convene meetings of CEOs for the governor every quarter. I will reinstitute that because we need to start listening, and the governor needs to listen to what the business leaders need in order to be responsive in a way that doesn't cost money for taxpayers without delivering real results in terms of jobs and opportunities for Maine people.
I have a real problem with government investing in people's businesses, all right? It's too subjective. I've never taken a penny in my life from government. I've earned every dollar I've ever had. I think the best thing we could do is get government the hell out of the way. I'm sick and tired of all these programs. This is going to be the program for that and the program for that, and we're going to do this for you. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Run for the hills, all right? I'm sorry. I will support the mills in every which way possible. I think the mills have been fighting Governor Mills, all right, and the policies that she's put into place. So for me, I'm a common sense guy. I've been in business my entire life. I've always balanced my checkbook. I've handled millions and millions and millions of dollars. I've done transactions. I own F.O. Bailey Real Estate. It's a 207-year-old company here in the state of Maine. It's Maine's oldest continuous running company. I bring investment into this state on a regular basis. Big investment. And I'll tell you, it sickens me to see all the blockades the government has put out there. So, yes, I want to help you in any way, shape, or form as governor as I can, but I believe that it's taxpayer money and it's not mine to give. But I think if it's a good investment, there will be plenty of private partners that would be willing to step up and invest in what you're doing.
First, I want to thank Angus and Bobby for immediately throwing me cough drops when I was choking up my water there. I've never gotten cough drops faster. But anyways, so yes, I would set up a program for, similar to FAME, but increase it specifically for legacy industries. Because the state's going to make money. You set up a good financing pool. We've done really interesting financing pools in my industry before. So you get lower access to capital, or cheaper access to capital. State ends up making money. We support our legacy industries. And then in terms of forest products in general, you just have to really push innovation. The state needs to help as well, because when you lose these mills, you have less uses for the wood. You can't harvest as much as what you would normally harvest, and then it just becomes completely unproductive. Once we have more uses for the wood, you can fill all gaps in the market, get the industry back where it needs to be, and we need to do the same for all of our legacy industries.
Thank you for that. So we also had a question submitted from members of the Manufacturers Association of Maine, and Brad Hiddle, our board chair, will go ahead and read that question, or ask that question. Oh, okay.
Maine has a long history as a key piece of the United States defense industrial base. In a time when
Do you want somebody to pick someone? Dr. Shaw.
Great. Well, as you noted, much of where this has to go is not just what is uniquely what the state or the governor can do, but what the governor can do in partnership with our federal delegation. So I don't think it's uniquely that of the purview of the governor. That said, there is a lot that the governor can be doing. The first is making sure that the manufacturers that are within that industry have the support they need from the state level. A lot of that comes down to things like infrastructure, access to available resources that they need, making sure that they've got the capital access that they need. For example, we've talked about FAME. That's just one piece of it. The other piece that I've heard repeatedly when I've spoken with the leadership of those organizations is not so much the help they need to secure the contracts. Again, a lot of our federal delegation plays a big role there, but it's reducing the other costs that their businesses face.
10 seconds.
We've already talked about energy costs. The one that we haven't zeroed in on is healthcare costs. Their healthcare costs are sky high. In fact, in many respects, many of these big entities are healthcare companies that also happen on the side to make warships. The governor has a major role to play in helping to bring down their healthcare costs, both through competitive means as well as through regulatory means. Making those investments will help those industries stay competitive relative to their counterparts in other states.
Well, this is a perfect setup because my second priority area is maritime innovation, and when I think about that, I think about the defense industrial base. You know, there's an experiment that a friend of mine ran. He's not in economic development, but he wants to be, and he called 10 companies on the West Coast. He got 2 of them to visit Brunswick Landing, and both of them are signing leases to come here. One of them is in aerospace and one of them is in maritime. And that told me this is a place that we can win. So back to the same model in forest products, have a very specialized, dedicated team of hunters to go out and get that. Make sure that they know about where all our suppliers are out there in the world. Make sure that we are working closely with the federal delegation to connect them with programs, because as they build in defense demand, you get the demand curve, they get really good at making it, they then go into consumer markets. We could have an ROI for a long time if we build in this
10
area.
seconds.
And finally, you know, there was a shipyard that's gonna be built on the West Coast that we missed out on. There's next generation of sensing in the ocean and drones and small vessels. Doesn't need to be built by the government, but we need to be at the table recruiting that next shipyard to come here and be built in the state of Maine.
I'm just continually amazed as I travel the state about all of the innovation that Mainers and business people are doing on their own. And this is an area which I've witnessed, you know, up at Loring Air Force Base. They're bringing new businesses in there which you know, fit this profile. Howell Labs over in Bridgeton is doing some work for the U.S. Navy indirectly through the supply chain. Steve Hassett is here with Custom Composites in Bath, and you're getting a piece of that wealth that's coming through subcontracting and getting building components. So we have a great opportunity in this area. We've got a lot of talented people, a lot of businesses with the engineering background, and already working in the defense industry in various ways. We also have capital people like North Atlantic Capital I met with who have a dedicated fund for this. So I think what's the governor's role? Know about it, learn about it, share information, coordinate, but make sure that in Maine, the left hand knows what the right hand is doing with respect to this really great opportunity that we have.
Well, in order to have Maine succeed, we have to re-elect Susan Collins. We have to elect Paul LePage into our United States Congress, District 2. And David Jones is governor. I mean, let's face it. You've got to have leadership. And without leadership and without investment into the state and industries you're talking about will not succeed. We have some really great opportunity. We have a lot of coastline here. We're the most eastern point in the United States. We got some great deep ports further north that are underutilized. You know, you heard Trump talk about Greenland, and when there was a little report that I put out on that about how that could benefit the great state of Maine. You know, you got to be creative. The bottom line, you got to have leadership that cares, and you have leadership that makes good decisions
10 seconds.
and can recognize bad decisions when they're on his desk.
All right, well, manufacturing support is critical, not just for that industry, but for all of them. The state can obviously support from a workforce standpoint in a lot of the ways that we already discussed. You have to certainly help manufacturers be more efficient, so you can help them to lower costs in the areas that are primary to them, which is electricity, insurance, housing, regulatory issues that add to the costs, because margin management is incredibly important. That allows manufacturers to reinvest more, and if you're not at the cutting edge of reinvestment, you're not going to get as much of that business as you need. And then that will make sure our manufacturers are competitive, not just from price, but also from top quality, which is essential. Then you get that great need for people to have things built here. And then finally, that is going to compound on itself and pull more manufacturers into the state. And then it creates a greater ecosystem where more manufacturing business comes to the state and it supports everybody.
Maine was built by hand. And a lot of that building was shipbuilding. It is part of our real origin story here in this state, and fortunately we've kept it going for a long time, and we have a great skill set and a great reputation around the world for what we do. The U.S., though, is way behind on shipbuilding, which tells me there is a lot of reason for optimism and hope and possibility if we help focus and solve some of the problems we've already talked about. Education, workforce development, training, healthcare, childcare, all of those challenges, energy, we need to resolve. But as Owen described, right, there's Anduril, a company that could have come here, and unfortunately we lost out because I don't think they thought that we were competitive. I've talked to people who are there, they still don't think we're competitive. But I think there's real opportunity to bring companies like that, and again, as Owen described, a friend of ours has managed to bring a couple of companies to Brunswick who are industrial defense companies because we have resources that they really need, namely workforce and access to an ocean. That is a heck of a lot cheaper than California, which is where they are. So I'm really optimistic about what's possible, but I really think that it's only going to happen if we've got a governor who is able to be an ambassador, do the outreach, and help make sure that there's a single door for people to walk through, for example, and that we start working on some of these challenges like permitting reform. You know, someone told me the other day we have about $7 billion worth of projects waiting for permits in Maine. If you could just solve that one piece, you'd have an enormous economic pickup here in our state. So if you can solve some of those challenges so that people want to come to Maine, and I think the governor can help do that both by reducing red tape and creating a single point of entry for people, I think it'll make a real difference for Maine's economy. It's the kind of work I've done, and I'm excited to do it here.
The Anduril story and our impotence around marine construction are sort of almost, they're not quite at the Brookfield being put out by the state level of irony and sickness in my heart, but it's right up there. Let me just take the minute so I don't bore you to death to try a different. We get it, right? We're the bottom 5 in business climate. We're the bottom 5 in growth. We're the top 5 in costs, the core input costs. And in those top 5 costs, we have state-created monopolies that create not just waste, but impotence, inflexibility, lack of innovation. In picking a governor, what signal might you want to send to the investor community, the banking community, the larger industrial community about this state? What might you want to say with the person you choose? Somebody who has returned money to investors, who has made investments, who has employed people, trained them,
10 seconds.
housed them. I believe we need to make a signal, fire a shot heard around the economy, not just with the policy we choose to adopt, but with the governor we choose to adopt, and I think it's urgent.
How do you increase the defense industrial base? There are 2 methods, and there are 2 sectors. The 2 methods are to recruit companies in here with incentives, the same way most states who compete with us do. And the second method is to coordinate with Susan Collins, who happens to get the entire delegation to coordinate with Susan Collins, who happens to be one of the most powerful people in Washington as the chairperson of appropriations. What are the 2 sectors? The 2 sectors are aviation and maritime. I ran the largest air force that the United States has outside the Pentagon. I know all the airframes, fixed wing, rotor wing. What you have to do is look at the at the incredible advantages, comparative advantages, presented by Loring and the former P3 base at Brunswick, maximize them, and bring aviation, avionics, SLEP programs, all of them
10 seconds.
in here. And the second thing you have to do is look at maritime. Bath Iron Works needs to get as many possible contracts as they can, and that has to do with us working together.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we can do, I think we've talked about for almost 2 hours now, and it's making sure that we have a business climate that can support what we already have, can support Bath Iron Works, support Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. I've seen a lot of increased traffic recently that New Hampshire wants to take that back from us, so we got to protect ourselves from them too. You know, we need to make sure that we have a great business climate. That means reducing regulations, it means reducing taxes, it means incentives for people to come here, all the things people said. But I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. These are government defense contracts. Re-electing U.S. Senator Susan Collins is the best possible option we have to keep those things. She's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, which has already been said. These are government contracts we have to compete for. That's the bottom line. And we have to have somebody who is, as governor, can go down and make the argument as to why Maine is the best place to send these contracts, and I will do that. So that's what I think the best options are for us to get the contracts that you were talking about.
So when I got here, I visited all the exhibit tables, and I said, what's the Apex Accelerator? It's this really great program. They said it's like speed dating for small businesses in Maine with large defense contractors. That is really cool. That is cutting edge. And I think the answer probably lies with the Maine Manufacturing Association of the Forest Products Council. When you're asking a lot of these questions, you all have the answers, and it's up to the next governor to have an open door and to actually listen. I'm one of the few Democrats in the state that's won a Trump district multiple times. In 2016, I won a Senate district that voted for Donald Trump and voted for me, and I got reelected twice. Now, I was former head of the ACLU, former leader on marriage equality. I had a high concentration of BIW workers in my district. And I learned you can be pro-worker and pro-business, and if you listen, there's a lot of common ground. There's more than unites us than divides us. Now, I'm backing Graham Plattner in this U.S. Senate race. I think Maine industry is going to flourish under his leadership. We may agree to disagree on that, but I think when it comes to moving Maine's economy forward, everybody in the room can agree on that.
Okay, so that concludes that portion of the agenda. Now we're going to move into a lightning round. I'll ask a few brief answers, brief responses.
Wait,
yes, sir.
I do have one more question.
Oh,
Yeah, we do have one more. Sorry.
I missed one.
Yeah, that's okay. So this one is around R&D and innovation.
There it is.
Maine manufacturers rely on innovation to stay competitive, yet Maine does not fully conform to the federal R&D tax credit, creating complexity and potentially limiting investment. At the same time, funding for the Maine Technology Institute, the state's primary organization supporting innovation and commercialization, is often constrained and unpredictable. If elected governor, how would you strengthen Maine's approach to R&D and innovation, including tax policy and support for commercialization to help companies develop and bring new products and processes to market? David, why don't we go you, and we'll go that way, to your right.
So how would I support R&D in Maine? And you said we're not conforming to federal regulations, right? Well, how about if we make our goal to conform, right? And get back on track. You know, I'm not a big proponent of government, and I like to keep government the hell out of the picture as much as I can. But you know, there are rules and regulations we all have to follow. And if anything could be done to benefit growth here in the state of Maine, encourage people to invest in the state of Maine, you know, I'm all for it. We've had so many companies that thought about coming here, and they left. They turned their backs. Energy costs are through the roof. You know, there's no incentives for them to do it, to create the jobs. You know, that data center was like almost out.
10
And
seconds.
if Janet wasn't running for U.S. Senate, she would have let it pass, and it would not have gone through. But she was running at the time, and she vetoed it. Thank God. So we got to encourage people to come to the state of Maine. We got to encourage them to invest in our state, and we've got to do everything we can to make it grow. This is a state that's so full of opportunity. It
Time's up.
really is. It's an opportunity for everybody. You come here, you invest, and we get the government the hell out of the way. We can grow away, we can keep our children here, we can grow our businesses here, and we can get rid of this ridiculous tax burden we have.
I'm a big believer in R&D expenditures in a limited and focused way for the state. In fact, you know, it was about 25 years ago that I chaired the Joint Select Committee on R&D, recognizing that we were 51st out of 50 states plus the District of Columbia in the amount of private and public sector R&D, and we changed that. We created the Maine Technology Institute when I was co-chairing that committee. We made some limited investments through bonding that have sparked some of the things we talked about, the Advanced Composite Center at UMaine, biosciences, and it has been tremendously successful, but we're slipping again. And MTI was mentioned. They've been flat funded for 20 years at $6 million, and they've scrounged, they've invested wisely, they've got some of that money back in circulation, but there's a lot of work that we can do and should do from the government and from the state to stimulate these investments, because they make an actual return of $20 for every $1 invested. It's a very good deal for the people of Maine.
So when I look at this, I look at it through the lens of where we have a competitive advantage. As I talked about, maritime innovation, advanced forest products, life science, and AI horizontal. I've talked about in my plan the Katahdin Horizon Partnership, which is a recapitalization in MTI that looks at focusing on those areas. 2, it's MEIF follows suit. We're going to increase funding in MEIF in those areas. We're going to restore the seed tax credit up to 50% instead of 40%. We're going to create a tax credit for venture capital funds into the state to bring more capital into this state. We're also going to create a builders in residence program, which one of the missing links in a lot of the R&D projects that go across the state are the actual entrepreneurs. This program will be a 1-year mandate to recruit high-quality people. You bring them in, you give them free reign of all the IP that has anything to do with state money.
10 seconds.
They charge to go build a company, and if they don't build a company, it's not success. We pair them with high-quality mentors, the captains of our industries, and we do that. I think you're going to see some really cool companies built by those people on the other side of us.
I like this question a lot, and I'm going to focus in on one area that is of primary importance to me, and that is the biotechnology sector. Not just 200 miles away from here, there's one of the most thriving biotech sectors on the planet, to say nothing of those on the East Coast. What do they have that Maine doesn't have? What are they doing that Maine has not been doing? And as I've dug into this issue and this conundrum, what has emerged is that Maine has the entrepreneurial spirit. We have the scientists that are doing the work. But what we don't have are the ability for those scientists to take their ideas for new diagnostics, for new therapeutics, for new devices, and make those into thriving companies. So one of the things that the state can do is help invest, not just in the R&D per se, but in the technology transfer, the ability to take an idea and turn it into a company.
10 seconds.
We can also do more to back that up. Where all these ideas come from fundamentally are through our universities. But sadly, funding for the UMaine system, to say nothing of the others, has fallen over the past 30 years. We need to get that back on track so we can use that as an engine for economic growth. R&D is the core of that.
I was a research assistant at the Mount Desert Island Biological Laboratory. I'm a published author in acid-base transfer in the Longhorn Sculpin. And what I saw with MDIBL and Jackson Lab in my lifetime is they've grown from small research labs to international powerhouses. They have spun off companies to monetize some of the research that's happening there, and Biggle Laboratory is doing the same thing. So I think there's tremendous potential. But in digging into the state budget, so Secretary of State's budget is $80 million. Would you think the Department of Economic and Community Development is more or less? Well, I'll tell you, it's less. That's insane. In order for Maine to prosper, if we are going to be a state that grows beyond the next 4 years, but into the next decade, 50 years, 250 years,
10 seconds.
we need to invest in research and development. We need to invest in economic development. It is crucial to the future of our state.
I think one of the things that was mentioned in the question itself was tax conformity, and I think that's very, very important. I've said it a couple of times already, but I would fully agree with conforming to the federal government on research and development standards. The other thing I would do as governor, and this is, I think, incredibly important for any governor to remember, is that we have access to the bully pulpit. You know, it's not always about a new regulation or a new program or repealing this or repealing that. Sometimes it's about bringing people into the room, asking them what they need, and then coming up with a solution for them or getting them to do something that's just good for the state. There's a lot of places in government that I've been able to do that, whether it be in housing or in education when I was in the legislature and even outside of the legislature. So I want to make sure that when we're looking at these kind of investments, we're bringing people to the table with the assets that they have. I'd also like to make sure that we have access to private capital, and I think that lies with giving people some sort of incentive to do that. Access to capital is the biggest thing with research and development, and I want to make sure that people have access to that.
So innovation requires R&D. R&D requires thinking long-term, not short-term. One of the things the governor can do is look sector by sector at how you would create the equivalent of incubators and leverage private sector investment by bringing federal funds in. There are billions of dollars of grants in federal funds, and look at trying to create in this state a culture of innovation and incubation. There's no reason in the world we can't do it. Companies can be literally rewarded for it. We used to have big groups like Bell Labs that did this. We don't anymore. But sector by sector, we can incentivize with our tax code innovation. And that will make it additionally interesting for people to come to the state of Maine.
Okay, we've got some bipartisanship going here. Everybody in both parties wants to add some new programs because they believe that the state of Maine government is going to actually create enough R&D to justify such an investment. While we are in a crisis, while we are 50th out of 50 states, while our taxes are the third highest, while 76% of our fourth graders can't read. This moment right now is why I'm running for governor. No, you can't have R&D or Maine-specific VC funds. VC is fungible. Money is fungible. It flows across state lines. We need to have a low-energy, low healthcare cost, high-quality education for the core tools that allow someone to be trained by an employer so that we can live as a state. And everything else is true hubris. It's either naivete or it's cynically trying to get you by your vote with a promise. Nonsense. Shrink Augusta, shred the bureaucracy, cut the taxes, and get on the road, smell like jet fuel, inviting people back to Maine.
Maine has one of the lower GDPs per resident. We also have very low R&D. I think those two things are connected. And we do have some great R&D history in our state. The Jackson Labs, Bigelow, for example. And those are also great jobs, by the way. They are six-figure jobs at those places. And so R&D jobs in our state are the kinds of thing we should want. Unfortunately, Jax has been recently expanding into other states. We should be trying to focus on how do we make sure we help them. So I agree, part of the governor's role is this convener-in-chief. And so let's bring together all of the colleges, all of the labs, all of the businesses, all of the DECD and MTI and FAME, all of those organizations to figure out how do we help? How do we, or at least at a minimum, how do we get out of the way so that people do in fact want to stay here? And again, I think it's really important that we focus on the advantages that we have in forest products, in the blue economy, in shipbuilding, in the things where Maine has a real competitive advantage. Because I think chasing kind of the hot new thing is probably something that ends up where we could spend a heck of a lot of time and energy and money and not actually accomplish the goal, because we're not going to compete with Silicon Valley or New York or Dallas for a lot of these things.
Okay, fairly simple answer for me. I mean, first on the nonconformity for federal tax cuts. I mean, that's just all because of the amount of spending the state's doing. They're reaching for every viable, source of income they have, whether it's reasonable or not, to continue to fund the spending increase. So that's why we're not doing those things. So you, of course, have to conform the federal tax cuts. On the innovation side, there are so many different businesses that require R&D in the state. You certainly need to get R&D feedback from them, input from them on what is important to continue their R&D. And then you simply take that feedback, put it into strategic initiatives, you align it with time-based outcomes, and then you deliver a plan that the industry needs.
All right.
Okay, now it's the lightning round. Okay, so this will be yes or no with the yes or no. Okay. So my first question, the most damaging forest pest in North America, the spruce budworm, is native to Maine. Every 40 years or so, populations outbreak, causing mass defoliation and tree mortality across millions of acres of spruce fir forest. In 2025, elevated budworm populations erupted across northwestern Maine, prompting federal natural disaster relief funding that was matched with the supplemental budget at the state and with private funds to implement the Early Intervention Strategy program. EIS differs from programs in the past in that it is designed to alter outbreak dynamics to maintain a healthy forest and a healthy economy. If you are governor, will you continue to support this critical program with matching funds included in your budget? And if not, do you need more information to make an informed choice?
Yes.
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 And yes.
Yes.
Yes, and the Maine Forest Service has done a great job leading on this.
Yes, they have.
More information. I want to know why the landowners, the Irvings, come on, Irving, has he given everything he needs before the state chips in? I want to see. I want to be convinced first. We do need to fight the budworm. I'm good there. Just want to know that the private sector is all the way in.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll start at that end and come back. This one's a two-part question, so feel free to address both when you have the microphone. Would you ensure that the Shawmut Dam remains in place until a technical solution for structure removal is identified that all parties are comfortable with? And as a follow-up question, do you view a fishway similar to the one in Howland on the Penobscot River as a potential solution for fish passage?
Yes, I will preserve all 4 dams and Sappi, and it will be my first executive order. And fishways are fine, but people are more important, so people come first.
Yes, I love the idea of the Nature Conservancy just building the freaking fishways. They can save some money, and we can still have electricity and plants.
Yes, there needs to be a solution in place. I'd want more information on how a fishway would actually work.
Absolutely, you have to make sure that dam stays in place, and Sappi is taken care of fully. Fishways, there's plenty of technology on that. They work all over the place, so it should be fine.
Taking out those dams is the dumbest idea I've heard in 40 years living here in the state of Maine. So it takes the prize for that. And fishways, well, if we don't take out the dam, we really don't need them, right?
Yeah. Now he's confused me completely. Yes. Yes, and I haven't personally traveled through that fishway, but I'm going to take your word, Krista, that it's a good one. Thanks.
Yes, and more info on the fishways.
Yes, and probably not on the fishways.
So I trust the Nature Conservancy and Sappi and the stakeholders to come together to figure out what's right for the river, what's right for Sappi, to keep Sappi going. My husband's from Skowhegan. I know how important that mill is. And I think that the stakeholders can come to the right solution. And I think fish passage is important for our fishing industry as well. And I think we can do both.
I would say yes, and I'd need more information, but I do think that fish ladder was the one that Governor LePage said in 2022 he'd offer to go and manually move the fish up the ladder. So if he's open to that, I think that could be a cost savings measure.
Okay. The next.
We're going to hire Paul LePage to do that.
We'll start with you, Garrett. I just have a couple more. Demand for pulpwood has dropped significantly in Maine since 2014. The total market loss for mill closures is 4.6 million green tons annually, or 415 truckloads every single day of the year. Will you support efforts to promote innovative uses for low-grade wood to help restore lost markets and expand existing ones?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm going to put funding for a mass timber facility in my first budget.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yes.
Yes, and I support the businesses that are already doing that, using the whole tree, like tan bark and others across the state. Timber HP is another great example.
Yes. Yes.
Unless this is a trick question, yes.
Yes, but companies like Binder Halls and others that already are doing CLT want to come in. We don't need to put money into it. They'll invest. We just got to change our rules so they can come in.
Yes, and incentivize things like cross-laminate timber.
All right, really easy. Should Maine conform to federal tax policy on tips and overtime?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess so. I think it's unfair.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yes.
I suppose.
Absolutely.
I think so.
Yes.
No.
I think conformity is complicated.
Yes.
All right, and then do you support data centers in the state of Maine?
Yes.
Yes.
Data center.
I would assign the moratorium so that we can put some guardrails in place. Now, I run a data center, but it's a lot smaller than what's being proposed.
I think the pause is prudent to get our regulatory framework in place first so we don't get taken advantage of.
Yeah, yes, but we can't give them property tax breaks and a bunch of other benefits for that. They need to stand on their own.
I supported the moratorium. I think that we need to really scrutinize the policy because they cannot be shifting costs onto Maine residents and ratepayers.
Well, that plan didn't shift it. There's already 128 megawatts of power being generated there, so.
I'm not talking about J. I'm talking about data centers overall in other locations. I support the J.
I support it.
Yes, I do. I do think you just have to look at the amount of energy that they use, but it wouldn't be an issue if our state wasn't in such a bad situation with its policies for energy, but yes, I support it.
Yeah, I share people's concerns about environmental impact and ratepayer impact especially, but I know that there are intelligent ways to make sure that you can mitigate that, especially around interruptible rates if you want to get into the weeds. But I support them as long as we can make sure we protect ratepayers.
Yes. Yes, 80% of all CapEx in the United States right now, corporate CapEx, and we get the first state that says, no, we don't want any of it, and we are the 49th out of 50 states in economic growth. You don't think we can figure out a way to create electrical supply? That means we also don't want factories or mills or anyone else who creates electricity and uses water. This is the most ridiculous false premise. This is what's wrong with us. This is crazy
10
talk.
seconds.
Yes.
So yes, and I have met with both of the individuals that are working at both Jay and Sanford. As long as you have it off the grid with biomass, it is straightforward, it should be done, and the moratorium was the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
Okay. Yes. All right, so now starting with the Honorable Garrett Mason. With your remaining minute, please describe which policies you would prioritize as governor to strengthen Maine's economy and support manufacturers across the state.
Is this the last question or a closing statement?
Closing.
Oh, this is the closing. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us here today. I've really appreciated the conversation, and it's not often that we get the opportunity to be on the stage with everybody that's in the race. This field will winnow down pretty quickly in about a month, so it won't be as long next time, I promise. But I can tell you this, that if I'm elected governor, the first thing that I'm going to focus on is the budget. We need a responsible budget that delivers the affordability agenda for not only businesses, but for people. And that is the first thing that I will be working on, like I said, during the campaign to make sure that the budget that when I am elected is one that reflects the values that I bring to the table, not one that the bureaucracy brings to the table. So that's my promise to you. Thank you so much for having us today, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. You know, as Secretary of State, I've made some tough decisions, and I ruled that Donald Trump wasn't eligible for the ballot in 2024, and I got doxxed and swatted, and my husband and I had to go live in a safe house. But every day, I woke up and drove to my office to do my job because I don't back down to bullies. Now, a couple months later, I was touring polling places, and this guy comes barreling up to me, and he said, "Are you Sheena Bellows?" And I didn't say, "No, it's Shenna. It rhymes with Jenna." I just said, "Yeah." He said, "I hear you on the radio all the time." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You and Donald Trump are my favorite politicians." He said, "I don't always agree with you, but you always say what you mean." And so this is my promise on economic development to Maine manufacturers and to the Forest Products Council. You might not always agree with me. You might not even vote for me, but I'll always show up no matter what. I will listen, I will do my homework, and I'll have an open door. And you can check out my Economic New Deal for Maine on my website at bellowsformaine.com.
I'm going to keep my 1 minute closing to under 3 minutes. One of the things that I try to share with my team a lot is, especially when we have a bad day or a bad week, which happens a lot, is don't look back. We're not going that way. And as I think about the work that you all do with your companies, with your employees, and your strategic vision, I sort of see the same idea, which is Maine has certainly had its fair share of ups and downs and obstacles, but don't look back, because we're not going that way. I hope that as governor, what I can provide is not just the stability and predictability that we've talked about, but ultimately an approach that gets everybody on the same page with a shared vision, so we're all rowing in the same direction. Whether that's with cultivating new industries, shoring up heritage industries, or starting new sectors like life sciences and others. My hope is that not only will we get that stability, but we will all be operating from the same strategic playbook, so we're all rowing in the same direction. Thank you, everyone.
I'm a political outsider with roots north of Augusta, and I've built my career in the Southern Maine business community. I'm an engineer and an entrepreneur, and I think outside the box and solve problems. That's what I think it's going to take to win, and I think to govern this year. I know the heritage industries of our state. I've worked in pulp and paper and forest products. I've also worked in the future in the fourth industrial revolution with my company, and the lot's changing there, and we need to do better than the third industrial revolution. I can talk to you about sawmills or software. I can help lead us into the future. To that end, you know, I've released a plan. It's long, it's 70 pages. 130 policies, but I see it as something that you can hold me accountable to, and as I ask for your vote, I think that's really important, you know, because I want to make sure that Maine is more than vacation land for wealthy people. That's a place that we can all live, work, and prosper. A place that whether you grew up in a double wide on the outskirts of Portland or a trailer off a dirt road in Patton, you can use your God-given talents to reach your highest potential with nothing standing in your way. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I understand the challenges businesses are facing because I have lived them. I worked in manufacturing, I've run businesses, I've met payroll, and I've made difficult decisions like you all do under pressure. I know what it takes to grow jobs, support workers, and keep a business moving forward. Business leaders need consistency, not chaos. They need an ally who knows how to get things done in government. Solving Maine's challenges requires experienced, steady leadership. Maine's next governor cannot be learning on the job. As governor, I'll be focused on three things, as I said: making life more affordable, growing our economy, and restoring trust in government. Now, you know what this industry needs. My job as governor will be to create the conditions where you can all succeed, where the next generation sees a future in this work, and where markets reward sustainable management. I'm asking for your input, your expertise, and your vote. Let's get to work.
The last thing the state of Maine needs is a governor that has Trump derangement syndrome. And I'll tell you, I've witnessed this stuff over and over again. All my life, I've been self-employed. I'm a guy that had an idea, built a life, raised a family, built a business. My roots are here. I love this state. And I've devoted my life to this state. You need someone that can see the forest through the trees and is there with solid principles, honesty, sincerity, and really wants to have your back, has been where you are, knows what it's like to start from nothing, knows what it's like to build a company, and knows what it's like to have to sustain that company and deal with the employment issues and the insurance issues and the education in the state of Maine. I mean, I have 6 kids. I've entered all of them through school. Half my kids don't even want to put their kids in public school anymore because they're scared to death of what they're learning. You want a governor that's a common sense approach. You want a guy who really means what he says. I am humbly asking for your support for me to be the next governor of the state of Maine. I promise you this, that I will work as hard and as smart as that is humanly possible. I love the state, I love my family, I love God, and I want to see nothing but good things happen for the great state of Maine.
All right, so in addition to business, which is very challenging in Maine, Maine's just facing a lot of challenges right now, and in many respects, if we don't fix some of the things we have at hand, it's going to be very hard to fix them. We've been going in the wrong direction. So I've run big companies. I've built $1 billion company from scratch, and it is an experience that very few people ever get, and it has given me the skills that I need to run the government very fluently and efficiently, and certainly from a business pro standpoint. As well, I have had nothing. I've been on unemployment, I've been on food stamps, and I've gone all the way through to being very successful. So it's given me a perspective that not a lot of people have, and I think it allows me to look at things differently, and that provides a valuable perspective in terms of solving the challenges that we have. At the end of the day, though, we can fix this. That's the good news. We can turn it around, and I believe we need to have a seasoned and experienced CEO who knows how to build the right team, build the right culture, and I think we're best prepared to do that for you.
I'm not from Augusta, but I am here to help. I have spent my life building companies, building teams, building energy projects, building housing. I know how hard it is, but I also know how important it is and how you can really bring people together to make a difference in other people's lives. That's what I'm committed to, that's what my life's been about, and that's what I want to do here in Maine. I think that really there are a couple of important things that the governor can do. First is about the culture. Do we have a culture that supports business growth? Do we have a culture that makes a small business person want to come here, want to grow here, want to continue to engage in our state? And I think that starts with the governor and then rolls on down from there. So I think that's number one. I think number two is this convener-in-chief idea of how do you get the right people in the right room at the right time to figure out how do you accomplish some of these things. The good news is in Maine, you can get those people. There are literally 10 of those people you could get in a room and make that difference. And then finally, how do we bring people together around some of our common challenges? And